This is Richard Simpson in the HBS studios in New York City. Today is the 11th of November, 1918. In less than an hour, the guns of the Great War will become silent. An armistice, agreed to by both sides, is set to start at 11 o'clock local time in eastern France. Robert Knowles is with the Canadian troops near Mons, Belgium, and Jeff Franklin is with the United States 79th Division near Moiré, France. First, we go to Jeff Franklin. Go ahead, Jeff.
HBS, Jeff Franklin with the United States 79th Division near Moiré. As you pointed out, we are less than an hour from the time of the ceasefire to the end of the war. An armistice was signed by the belligerents about 4 hours ago at Copigny. While there are quite a few units pulling back from the front, this hasn't stopped some units, including the United States 79th, from sending troops over the top before the ceasefire. Let me grab a soldier to ask him what's going on. Private, can I speak to you for a second?
I don't have time. Gotta go over the top. Just tell my parents, George and Linda Gunter, Baltimore, Maryland, that I'll be home as soon as I can after the ceasefire.
I'm sure they heard you, Private. Gunther, is it? I am standing here watching the men cross into no man's land as the war is still not over. I'm going to find an officer in charge of these men to find out if I can get answers as to why there is still offensive actions this close to the ceasefire. Back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Jeff. We now go to Robert Knowles with the Canadian 3rd Division outside Mons, Belgium. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Richard. I'm here with the Canadian 3rd Division, almost 5 miles northeast of Mons. This unit, along with the Canadian 2nd, has been fighting fiercely for the past 60 hours, attempting to take Mons from the Germans. Mons was under Canadian control as of 4 o'clock this morning. An hour later, Canadian troops were welcomed into Mons Town Hall. We are still pushing the Germans back towards the fatherland. Although the armistice is only less than an hour away, those in charge have decided to continue fighting until the ceasefire and try to take as much land as possible before the guns go silent. So far, I have no word on any Canadian soldiers killed in today's actions. Injuries as well so far have remained light. I know that the troops on this side of the front are anxiously awaiting 11 o'clock. I can only assume that the Germans are awaiting the same thing. Back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Robert. In recap, the ceasefire signaling the temporary end of hostilities in the Great War is scheduled to take place in less than an hour at 11 o'clock in eastern France. That would make it roughly 5 a.m. here in New York. At around 5 o'clock local time in Compiègne, France, the armistice was signed by Supreme Allied Commander Ferdinand Foch, Marshal of France, First Sea Lord Admiral Rosslyn Wemyss, French General Maxime Weygand, Rear Admiral George Hope, and Captain Jack Marriott, His Majesty's Navy, for the Allied side. The Germans were represented by the civilian politician Matthias Erzberger, Count Alfred von Obendorf, Major General Detloff von Winterfeldt, and Captain Ernst Venislau of the German Imperial Navy. From what we are gathering from sources, the Germans are to pull out of France, Luxembourg, Belgium, and Alsace-Lorraine within 15 days of the ceasefire. All civilians from those areas are to be repatriated immediately. There are apparently more conditions for the ceasefire. We will cover those as we get them. We now return to Jeff Franklin near Moiré. Go ahead, Jeff.
HBS, I am here with Colonel William Ross, United States 79th Division. Colonel Ross, can you tell me why we are still sending troops into battle with the ceasefire just a few minutes away?
These are the orders that were passed down from General Pershing. Even though there has been an agreement to put down all weapons, he wants to make sure that we are ready in case the ceasefire doesn't happen.
Do you think that there is a chance of that? Both sides appear to be tired of the fighting.
I don't want to think that it won't end, but, as is natural in situations like this, prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
But with the ceasefire so near, doesn't it bother you that the men you are sending to fight right now may be injured, or worse, killed?
I would be a fool to say it didn't, but I am bound by the orders I have been given, and to the oath to obey the orders that I made. I may not like it, but those are my orders. Now, if you excuse me, I have to get back to the war.
Of course, sir. That was Colonel William Ross of the United States Army. Fighting is continuing, even though the ceasefire is scheduled to... HBS, I'm not hearing any munitions at all. It is now 11 o'clock local time, and the ceasefire to end the war has gone into effect. Forward operations have also apparently ceased, although I cannot confirm that from my location. I would hope that this marks the end of the Great War. It was only a ceasefire. I imagine that peace talks will start relatively quickly. Back to you, HBS.
The guns are silent across the Western Front in Europe. A ceasefire, having gone into effect at 11 a.m. French time just a few minutes ago, is in effect. We now go back to Robert Knowles in Belgium with the Canadian troops.
HBS, we are getting reports that the ceasefire has actually started. We are also getting casualty reports from this, the last day of battle, from the Canadian lines. We are hearing that there were 15 wounded and 1 killed. That soldier happened to be in the last 5 minutes or so. His name has not been released yet. Also, unless otherwise, we believe the young man was the last killed in the Great War. Ceasefire has commenced. I turn it over to Jeff Franklin.
Thank you, Robert. We are getting word that 1 American soldier was killed 1 minute before the ceasefire commenced. His name will not be released by American authorities, but I personally have met the soldier since I tried to interview him not 15 minutes ago. This is just senseless. I now return you to HBS in New York.
The fighting in the Great War has stopped. While it is a temporary end, it is hoped that peace will come from this ceasefire. This has been the History Broadcasting System. We will interrupt regular programming should there be any more news. Thank you, and good morning.
In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To take you from falling hands we throw. The torch be yours, so hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Major John McCrae, Canadian doctor and World War I artillery commander. This presentation of the History Broadcasting System newsroom, The End of World War I, has been brought to you by History with R&R. It was produced, directed, and edited by Robert Knowles. Script was written by Richard Simpson. The cast included Robert Knowles as himself, Richard Simpson as himself, Jeff Franklin as himself, Michael Crawford, aka Anti-Trekker, as Private Henry Gunther, Bird of Prey 5 as Colonel William Ross. Join us again in 2 weeks as we present another History Broadcasting System news production. This is Stone Loki.
No water and no bombs. This is a good week.